Hello, my name is Adriana Jimenez, and the theme I decided to investigate further was spiritual beliefs. Artists have perfected the ability to communicate their various spiritual beliefs through their art by voicing historical events, cultural significance, expressing their spirituality, honoring religious figures, a contact between the heavenly and earth, a connection to their faith, and to disclose sacred tales. The first piece I investigated is from our textbook, Sidney Parkinson's A Portrait of a Maori. Sidney Parkinson was a Scottish botanical illustrator. His expedition illustrations held great importance and were later recognized as historically valuable for their new cultural finding. Parkinson utilized ink and ink wash as a medium to create a portrait of Maori. He diluted the pigment with water to create layering to master the detailing of the face. He created contrast by shading and emphasis through layering the diluted colors over the pigment. A portrait of a Maori is also labeled as bilateral symmetry due to how Parkinson balanced the face equally on both sides. Parkinson creates visual texture through emphasized patterns which draw the viewer to perceive a portrait of a Maori for their cultural identity and spirituality rather than just a historical record. The second piece I investigated was Michelangelo's The Creation of Adam. Michelangelo surpassed many as a painter, poet, architect, and sculptor in Renaissance art. Michelangelo used fresco as a medium to create the creation of Adam, applying water-based pigments directly onto wet plaster on the central panel of the Sistine Chapel ceiling. Michelangelo's use of light and shadows make the figures in the mural appear three-dimensional and have a sculptural form. His use of diagonal lines and high contrast colors grants the fresco movement through the figures. He creates emphasis by showcasing a gap between God and Adam who are reaching for each other. This is also the main focal point of the illustration, which shows the unity between God and Adam, even though they are divided. The third piece I investigated is Leonardo da Vinci's The Last Supper. Leonardo da Vinci's various skills and masterpieces earned him the title of an Italian artist, sculptor, engineer, architect, and scientist in Renaissance art. Leonardo da Vinci created The Last Supper with tempera and oil paints directly over dry plaster instead of wet plaster, as was usually used in fresco. Creating The Last Supper over dry plaster with oil paints allowed Leonardo the ability to use sfumato as a painting technique. Leonardo was able to spend his time blending and going into detail since he had the advantage of it slowly drying. Leonardo creates balance, unity, and rhythm by grouping the apostles into groups of three. In The Last Supper, Leonardo da Vinci places emphasis on Christ and makes him the focal point of this illustration. He also creates emotional realism and movement through the various feelings coming from each apostle when Christ announces the betrayal. The fourth and final piece I investigated was Raphael's The Transfiguration. Raphael was a dominant painter from the High Renaissance. He earned great knowledge and experience from a young age since his father was also a painter. Raphael created the Transfiguration by combining pigments with the binder, oilseed, applying the oil paints onto wood, and then transferring it onto a canvas. Raphael had the advantage of time to blend colors and create detailed light since oil paints dry slowly. Raphael creates contrast through the composition, using light and darkness to contrast the serenity from heaven and the chaos on earth with a possessed child. Raphael creates emphasis using heavy lighting surrounding Christ, symbolizing his power, authority, and divinity. He also creates movement and unity between heaven and humankind. Raphael does a phenomenal job of communicating the spiritual message, which is faith. Although all four compositions convey different designs, mediums, and styles, they all communicate important messages. All four artists utilize the elements of art and principles of a design differently in each composition, and they all use different materials and techniques, but they all communicate the same theme, which is spiritual beliefs, and had lasting impacts on culture. Here's my works cited page. Thanks for watching.